Welcome everyone to Deny Delay Depose, Health over Wealth. We've got a lot to unpack today, a whole heap of stuff happening at the intersection of politics, economics, and of course, healthcare.
Absolutely. It feels like we're living in a pressure cooker right now. Every day there's some new development that could fundamentally change the landscape of, well, everything, really.
I don't know if I'd go that far. Things are certainly turbulent, but I think the system is more resilient than people give it credit for. It adapts, it evolves. It's not perfect, but it is what we have, and that's capitalism, baby.
That's a very optimistic point of view. Resilient how? Because I look at the headlines and I see proposed budget cuts to HHS, to the CDC, to NIH, and I just see a system being hollowed out to feed, well, something else.
Exactly. It's a dismantling, piece by piece. Like, did you see that article about the former Palantir workers condemning their own company's work with the Trump administration? It's like these data mining tools, designed to uphold democracy, are now being weaponized against vulnerable populations.
Yes, but let's be realistic. Palantir and companies like it are responding to market demand. If the government wants those tools, they'll provide them. It's a transaction. There's nothing inherently evil about providing a service.
See, that's where we fundamentally disagree. It's not just a transaction when it impacts people's lives. When that data is used to track, to deport, to deny services, that's not just providing a service, that's actively participating in injustice. Remember Mangioni's core issue was deny, delay, depose? Palantir is doing it on a massive scale.
And that's the crux of it, isn't it? It's not just about Palantir, it's about the whole system. It's all connected. The budget cuts, the ICE contracts, the rise of these surveillance technologies, it's all feeding into the same beast. It's no longer about the health and well-being of the population, it's about maintaining power and control for a select few. Mangioni knew this. He knew the system was rigged, and it cost him everything.
Okay, but again, is that the fault of capitalism, or is that the fault of individuals who are in powerful positions using capitalism as a tool? You can have a capitalist system that actually does good for the people. It's all about incentive structures and regulation.
Yes, and where do those incentive structures come from? Where does that regulation come from? Lobbying, corporate influence. It all cycles back to profit driving the decisions, doesn't it? For example, look at the NEA grant cuts. They claim it's about prioritizing American heritage. Come on, it's about controlling the narrative, silencing voices that don't align with the administration's agenda.
It's cultural warfare, plain and simple. And it has real-world consequences. Those NEA grants support community programs, arts education, all kinds of things that contribute to a healthy, vibrant society. Taking that away, it's like pulling the rug out from under the most vulnerable.
But don't you think some of those programs are redundant? Are they really creating lasting change, or are they just feel-good exercises that burn through taxpayer money? It is a finite amount of money, and it needs to go somewhere and be effective. If there is no return, then that's on them.
Return as defined by whom? Is return only measured in dollars and cents? What about the social return, the emotional return, the mental health return? Those things are incredibly difficult to quantify, but they're vital.
It's like we're living in a world that's allergic to nuance. Everything has to be boiled down to a spreadsheet, a profit margin. Where's the humanity in that?
I think the humanity comes from creating opportunities, and that's what I think about, because if you provide avenues for people to take care of themselves and to grow, then you can create a better society. It's about being proactive.
Proactive how? With these cuts, it's not possible to proactively act. You're actively making it harder for people to access the resources they need to thrive. LIHEAP, the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, is getting slashed. People are going to freeze this winter because some pencil pusher decided it was inefficient or prone to abuse. Come on.
And it's always the most vulnerable who suffer the most, isn't it? It's the elderly, the disabled, families with young children. These aren't abstract numbers on a spreadsheet. These are real people whose lives are being directly impacted by these decisions.
Okay, I get that these programs are important, but how do we address the root causes of poverty and inequality? Instead of just throwing money at the problem, how do we create lasting change that lifts people out of these situations? And yes, I get where that money is going, but still.
It's not just throwing money, it's strategically investing in people. And it's not an either situation. We can provide immediate relief and work on long-term solutions. We can address the symptoms and the disease.
Exactly. But it requires a fundamental shift in priorities. It requires us to value human life above profit margins. It requires us to acknowledge the systemic issues that are perpetuating inequality. Remember Mangioni? What drove him? A system that devalued human life, that prioritized profit over people. His actions, whatever you think of them, were a symptom of a much deeper malaise.
I see what you're saying, but I still think it is extreme, and Mangione's case is extreme. And I don't know if he is a martyr per se. But if we look at the healthcare system from a pragmatic point of view, what are some actionable steps we can take to improve it within the existing framework? Baby steps.
Actionable steps: negotiate drug prices, expand Medicaid, invest in community health centers, stop the bleeding with these budget cuts. Those are all immediate steps we can take to improve people's lives right now. But long term, we need to fundamentally rethink how we deliver healthcare. We need to decommodify it.
Decommodify it. That's the key. Healthcare is a human right, not a commodity to be bought and sold. And until we recognize that, we're going to keep spinning our wheels. Look at the situation with Musk and Starbase. He's creating his own little kingdom, controlling everything from the infrastructure to the healthcare. Is that really the future we want, where corporations have more power than governments?
Okay, but is that a bad thing? Musk is innovating, he's creating jobs, he's pushing the boundaries of technology. I am pretty sure he is not a saint, but is there a way to channel that innovation and wealth to benefit the broader community? Like, could Starbase become a testing ground for new healthcare technologies or delivery models?
And who gets to benefit from those technologies? Will they be accessible to everyone, or just the privileged few who can afford to live in Starbase? Remember the digital divide? Technology can exacerbate inequality if it's not deployed equitably.
Exactly. It's all about power and control. Musk wants to control everything, and that includes access to healthcare. It's a closed system, designed to benefit him and his employees, not the broader community. It's a microcosm of the larger problem we're facing, the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few.
I will say I did see that there were some protests about the beach access to the town and SpaceX's impacts to that area. I think there can be some impacts to sacred and indigenous tribes.
Exactly, and let's not forget about the environmental impact. Rocket launches aren't exactly eco-friendly, so you're concentrating power and potentially damaging the environment. It's completely wrong. It all goes back to thinking about people more than profit.
It's a Faustian bargain, isn't it? We're sacrificing our health, our environment, our very democracy at the altar of profit. And for what? So a few billionaires can accumulate even more wealth and power?
I do agree that balance is important. I still think that the government can step in. If they're going to put people in there, they need to figure out ways to help people get resources and health that they need. And on the other side, they need to respect the indigenous people because they were there first.
I keep thinking about the long-term consequences, the generational trauma that's being inflicted on communities by these policies, the stress, the anxiety, the feeling of powerlessness. That stuff doesn't just disappear, it gets passed down from generation to generation. That's what Mangione, in a way, was fighting against, the long tail of neglect and abuse by a system that doesn't care.
And that's why people supported him, even if they didn't condone his actions. They recognized that he was a product of the system, a victim of its inherent injustices. He became a symbol of resistance, a martyr for a cause that's bigger than all of us. This is why he is who he is.
But how do we channel that frustration and anger into something productive? How do we move beyond symbolic acts of violence and create real, lasting change? And to be clear, I still do not think he's a martyr for the healthcare. I think this is more of a fringe event.
By organizing, by educating, by demanding accountability, by voting, by protesting, by supporting candidates who prioritize people over profit, by building community, by creating alternative systems of care, by refusing to accept the status quo.
And by remembering the lessons of the past, by learning from Mangione's story, by understanding the systemic forces that drove him to such extreme measures. His case, his actions, should be a wake-up call for all of us. A reminder that we can't afford to be complacent, that we have to fight for a better future, a future where healthcare is a right, not a privilege.
But change takes time. It's incremental. You can't just flip a switch and expect everything to be different. There has to be compromises. It's a collaborative process.
Yes, and incremental change hasn't worked. Decades of compromise have left us with a system that's still incredibly expensive, still incredibly inaccessible, and still incredibly unjust. We need to be bold. We need to be radical. We need to demand a fundamental restructuring of the system.
We need a revolution, a healthcare revolution, a revolution that puts people first, that values human life above all else. And that starts with acknowledging the systemic issues that are perpetuating inequality and injustice. That starts with remembering Mangione, not as a criminal, but as a symbol of resistance, a martyr for a better future.
I do have one last question. Do you think AI can help this or hurt this? Because on one hand, you can have people get personalized treatment and get seen. but also there are some implicit biases that go into that decision, and then you have even more problems because people won't get the care they need.
AI is only a tool. The question is who controls the tool and how is it used? If AI is used to optimize profits for insurance companies, it's going to exacerbate inequality. But if AI is used to improve access to care and personalized treatment, that could be beneficial, however.
And who controls the data? Who owns the algorithms? Who gets to decide what constitutes personalized treatment? These are all questions that we need to be asking, and we need to be demanding transparency and accountability from the tech companies that are developing these technologies.
And there has to be regulations. There is going to have to be oversight.
Well, I hope people keep thinking about what it means to be alive in such a complex and dangerous world. That's all the time we have on the show today. Thank you to all who listened.
Thank you to all listeners. I hope that you keep thinking and you work to improve our future as a society.
Thank you for tuning in to Deny Delay Depose. Remember, health over wealth, always.